Late-night diners have always held a certain charm, a comforting refuge from the darkness of the world outside. They're places where you can grab a hot cup of coffee, share stories, and enjoy a meal, all while surrounded by the soothing sounds of sizzling grills and clinking cutlery. But what happens when the warmth of a diner is pierced by the chilling reality of danger lurking just beyond the neon lights? Join me as we delve into three spine-tingling true stories that illustrate how ordinary encounters can turn into horrifying nightmares. Story 1. The Last Customer. In the heart of Washington, nestled along a quiet stretch of highway, there existed a diner known for its late-night hours. I was a waitress there, and though I was accustomed to the oddities of late-night patrons, nothing prepared me for the night that would change everything. It was a typical evening. I had the closing shift, and as the clock approached 2 a.m., I was ready to close up shop. Despite the small-town vibe, there were usually a couple of customers lingering. That night was no different. A heavy-set man named Nolan entered just before closing time, wearing an oversized gray shirt and awkwardly high jeans. His jovial demeanor seemed to clash with the eerie atmosphere of the diner at such a late hour. I took his order, a simple black coffee and French toast, before returning to the kitchen. As the chef prepared his meal, I couldn't shake off a feeling of unease. Nolan struck up a conversation, his voice a low rumble, as he began asking questions about the diner, the town, and even my life. While I attempted to maintain the polite banter typical of the hospitality industry, my instincts whispered caution. After he finished his meal and paid, I began to clean up the diner, eager to escape the long hours of small talk. As I walked outside to my car, I noticed a silver sedan parked oddly close to the highway. I couldn't shake the feeling that it might belong to Nolan. My thoughts were interrupted by a sudden warning on my dashboard. Tire pressure alert. Panic set in as I realized I had a flat tire. Before I could react, headlights illuminated the dark roadside as Nolan pulled up beside me. "Kathy," he called out, a smile plastered on his face. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I quickly locked my car doors and called 911, trying to keep my voice steady as I informed the operator of my situation. Nolan knocked on my window, offering to help change the tire. I feigned nonchalance, telling him I was waiting for my boyfriend. As he walked away, my heart raced. Suddenly, there was a deafening sound. Glass shattered, and my heart dropped as Nolan reached through the broken window to grab my phone. He threw it aside and fled in his car, leaving me alone in the darkness. When the police finally arrived, they were kind and efficient. They changed my tire and promised to investigate the diner's surveillance footage. However, I never returned to that diner again. The memory of that night haunted me long after I left. Story 2. The Man with the Staring Eyes. Fast forward. A year later, I found myself working at an amusement park in upstate New York, eager for a fresh start. The October air was crisp, and I was ready to enjoy the festive season. But the excitement of Halloween was overshadowed by an encounter that still sends chills down my spine. It was a Sunday, one of the last days the park would be open before winter. After working my shift, I noticed a disheveled man with a scraggly beard approach me. His stained gray t-shirt and torn sweatpants screamed neglect. My instincts flared up, but I maintained professionalism as I answered his question about the restroom location. After my shift, I met my coworker Jordan, and we headed to a local diner for dinner. As we sat down, my heart stopped. The same man from the park was sitting just a few tables away, staring directly at me. I felt a chill run down my spine as I whispered to Jordan about the encounter. He shrugged it off, insisting it was just a coincidence. But my unease only deepened as we left the diner and got into the car. At the first red light, my worst fears were confirmed. The man in a white Honda was right next to us, his gaze fixed on me. I told Jordan, who quickly began to worry as well. After we made a few loops around our street to ensure we weren't being followed, I stepped inside my home alone, feeling a palpable sense of dread. That night, as I lay in bed, a noise outside my window made me jump. I got up and peered outside to find the man standing on my front lawn, staring directly at me with a twisted smile. I called 911, but by the time the police arrived, he had vanished, leaving me in a state of terror. I couldn't shake off the fear, and I quit my job the very next day. It was an experience that would stay with me, a haunting reminder of the strange and sinister encounters that can happen when you least expect them. Story 3. The Girl at the Door. One rainy night, I found myself back in the diner where it all began, working late once again. As I prepared for the evening rush, I felt a sense of familiarity wash over me. But that night would prove to be anything but ordinary. Around midnight, a man and a younger woman entered the diner. They seemed like an odd pair, the man looking around 40 while the woman barely appeared to be in her 20s. As I served them, I noticed their hushed conversation. The man's questions about my life made me uneasy, especially when he asked if I lived alone. I brushed it off as a harmless inquiry and continued my work. After their meal, I cleaned up and returned home, expecting a peaceful night. But as I settled into my apartment, a frantic pounding on my door jolted me from my thoughts. It was a young woman, drenched and desperate, begging to come inside. She claimed a man was following her. When I looked beyond her to the street, my heart sank. The same man from the diner was approaching. I slammed the door shut, locking it just as he reached for the handle. I was terrified. I called the police, my voice shaking as I explained the situation. The officer arrived, checked the area, and found no sign of either individual. As they left, they suggested I stay elsewhere for a few nights. I packed a bag and fled to my parents' house, but the memories lingered. The next day, I returned to find a chilling message scrawled on my door. "Thanks for the service, Beth." I realized I had narrowly escaped a potentially dangerous situation, but the terror of that night stayed with me. I decided it was time to move, choosing safety over familiarity. These stories remind us that danger can lurk in the most ordinary of places. A late-night diner, an amusement park, or even your own home can become a stage for unimaginable horrors. As you tuck into your next late-night meal, take a moment to appreciate the safety around you, but also remain aware that you never know what might be watching from the shadows.